There's a moment some women know too well. You're in the middle of a conversation. Maybe it's a disagreement. Maybe it's something tender you've been holding in for a long time. And suddenly your throat tightens. Your chest feels heavy. Your eyes burn. And before you can even explain what you're feeling, the tears arrive, not because you chose them, not because you wanted attention, not because the moment was dramatic. They just came, and almost immediately, something else follows. Shame. You look away. You apologize. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. As if your body made a mistake. As if your emotions crossed a line. As if you failed some invisible test of composure. Let me ask you something. Have you ever apologized for tears you didn't choose? Have you ever felt embarrassed for crying even when you were completely alone? Have you ever wondered why your emotions seem to reach the surface faster than everyone else's? And before we go any further, if you're someone who feels deeply and wants to understand your emotions without judgment, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore psychology in a way that helps you feel seen, not fixed. Now let me ask you something else. What if the question you've been asking yourself all these years is the wrong one? What if crying easily isn't a sign of weakness at all? What if it's a sign that your nervous system works differently, more responsively, more honestly than most people's? In this video, we're going to explore 6 rare psychological traits commonly found in women who cry easily. Not to teach you how to cry less, not to tell you to toughen up, but to help you understand what's actually happening inside your brain and body, your neurochemistry, your emotional processing, your stress regulation, so the shame can finally stop. Because the truth is, tears don't appear because you're broken. They appear because something inside you is still listening. And once you understand that, everything changes. Most women who cry easily don't actually believe they're weak. What they believe is something quieter and more painful. They believe they're inconvenient, too emotional, too much, unprofessional, hard to deal with. They watch other people stay composed and think, why can't I keep it together like everyone else? So let's name the lie you've been living under. The lie is that crying easily means emotional instability. That isn't psychology. That's conditioning. Your body doesn't cry because your character is flawed. Your body cries because your system reached a limit. And here's what most people never explain. Crying is not an emotion. Crying is a regulatory response. It's something your nervous system does when internal pressure needs to move instead of being stored. Let me ask you something important. Have you ever stayed calm during the actual crisis, handled everything, supported everyone else, and only cried hours later, in your car, your bathroom, or your bed? That's not delayed weakness. That's delayed safety. Your nervous system often waits until it believes you're finally allowed to soften. This is why so many women who cry easily are actually the strongest ones in the room during emergencies. They function when it matters most. And when the danger passes, the body completes the stress cycle through tears. But because we live in a culture that worships composure, this natural release gets mislabeled as failure. So instead of asking, why am I like this? A better question is, what is my body trying to regulate? And once you ask that question, something important happens. You stop fighting your nervous system, and you start listening to it. Now we need to understand what's actually happening inside the brain when tears come so quickly. Because once you understand the biology, the shame begins to lose its grip. Long before your mind forms a thought, your body has already decided how much it can hold. Your nervous system is constantly scanning the environment for signals of safety or threat. This happens faster than logic, faster than language, faster than self-control. Inside your brain, there's a network called the limbic system. It's responsible for emotional significance, deciding what matters and what doesn't. When something feels important, tender, unfair, or overwhelming, the limbic system activates. Then there's another part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. This area helps you regulate, reframe, and stay composed. It's what allows you to say, I can handle this. I'll stay calm. I'll deal with this later. When stress rises, your body releases chemicals like cortisol, preparing you to function, adapt, and push through. And for many women, that's exactly what happens. You stay focused. You stay capable. You stay strong. But strength has a cost. Once the pressure eases, when the conversation ends, when you're alone, when you finally feel safe, your nervous system needs to return to balance. This is where tears come in. Emotional tears aren't random. They're associated with shifts in neurochemistry, often involving the release of stress-related hormones and the activation of calming chemicals like oxytocin, which supports bonding and emotional soothing. That's why crying can feel strangely relieving afterward, even if nothing in your life has changed. Something inside your body has. Pressure has moved. The system has downshifted. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt calmer after crying and then wondered, why do I feel better when the problem is still there? Because your body didn't solve the situation. It solved the internal load. And this is where many women get confused. They try to stop the tears. They tell themselves to pull it together, to breathe through it, to hold it in. But suppressing tears doesn't increase your capacity. It just traps the pressure inside. And when pressure has nowhere to go, it doesn't disappear. It shows up later as anxiety, irritability, emotional numbness, or exhaustion. Some nervous systems are designed to filter aggressively. They mute background noise. They dull emotional shifts. They focus only on what feels immediately necessary. Other nervous systems work differently. Instead of filtering, they absorb. Women who cry easily often process emotional information in high detail. They notice changes in tone. They sense tension in silence. They register emotional undercurrents long before anyone says a word. This isn't imagination. It's how certain neural pathways are tuned through biology and experience. Through neuroplasticity, the brain strengthens whatever it repeatedly pays attention to. If your system learned early on to monitor emotional environments, to read moods, anticipate shifts, stay alert, those pathways became faster and more efficient. Over time, emotional awareness stops being a choice. It becomes automatic. Let me ask you something. Do you walk into a room and immediately feel when something is off, even if everyone is smiling? Do you sense when someone is holding back, even when they insist they're fine? That's not overthinking. That's context processing. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Processing more information doesn't just make you perceptive. It makes you tired. Because while others unconsciously discard emotional data, your brain keeps it active. By the end of the day, it's rarely one big event that leads to tears. It's the accumulation. The conversation where you stay composed. The tension you absorbed but never named. The expectations you carried quietly. The emotions you tracked without realizing you were tracking them. And when your system reaches capacity, it releases, often through tears. This is why women who cry easily are so often confused by their own reactions. They look at the trigger and think, why this? But the tears were never about just this moment. They were about everything that came before it. There's a moment many women recognize with confusion and self-criticism. Something minor happens. A short message. A comment that lands wrong. A forgotten detail. A tone that feels off. And suddenly you're crying. And the first thought that follows isn't curiosity. It's judgment. Why am I crying over this? This doesn't make sense. I'm overreacting. But here's what's actually happening. Your nervous system doesn't respond only to the present moment. It responds to cumulative load. When stress, responsibility, emotional monitoring, and self-control stack up without release, the system keeps holding until it can't. The final trigger isn't the cause. It's the last weight placed on an already full system. This is why tears can feel disproportionate to the moment, but perfectly proportional to the week, the month, or even the year you've been carrying. Let me ask you something honestly. When you look back at moments when you cried over nothing, can you see how much you had already been holding in? The body keeps track, even when the mind tries not to. And here's an important distinction most women are never taught. Crying in these moments isn't emotional collapse. It's emotional discharge. Your system is releasing what it no longer has the capacity to store. This is also where neurochemistry plays a role. When you're depleted, from lack of rest, chronic stress, constant emotional vigilance, your brain has less access to stabilizing chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, which support emotional buffering and resilience. So the threshold lowers, not because you became weaker, but because your system is doing its best with fewer resources. This is often the moment women turn against themselves. They replay the scene. They feel embarrassed. They promise themselves to do better next time. But the truth is, you weren't failing. You were responding. Some women don't just understand how others feel. They feel it. When someone near you is stressed, your body tightens. When someone shares pain, your chest feels heavy. When someone cries, your eyes burn, even if you barely know them. This isn't imagination. It's a psychobiological response. Your brain is wired for effective empathy, the kind where emotion doesn't stay intellectual. It moves through your nervous system. Certain neural pathways are especially responsive to emotional cues. Your system doesn't just observe emotion. It resonates with it. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, even though you hardly talked about yourself? Have you ever cried over someone else's story and then felt confused about why it affected you so deeply? That's not weakness. That's emotional permeability. Your nervous system temporarily carries what others are feeling, especially when you care, when you're attuned, when you're emotionally present. And when that emotional energy has nowhere to go, it needs an exit. Often, that exit is tears. This is why women who cry easily are often incredible listeners. They pick up what's unspoken. They sense discomfort before it's named. They respond with presence instead of advice. But there's a hidden cost. If you don't have boundaries around emotional intake, your system never fully empties. You give understanding. You give space. You give support. But you rarely give yourself permission to release. And here's the important part. Crying, in this context, isn't about your own story. It's about emotional weight you've been holding on behalf of others. Tears are your body saying, I felt that, and now I need to let it go. This is the trait most women misunderstand about themselves. Many women who cry easily don't lack control. They lack the ability to pretend for long. They can smile. They can stay polite. They can say the right things. But their bodies refuse to perform emotional calm when something inside is unsettled. And that's not a flaw. It's a value system expressed through the nervous system. Your body prioritizes truth over appearance. While others can compartmentalize, push emotions aside, delay them indefinitely, or disconnect from them entirely, your system insists on alignment. When something hurts, your body signals it. When something matters, your body reacts. When something feels wrong, your body doesn't stay silent. Let me ask you something. Do you feel worse when you try to hold tears back than when you let them pass? That tight throat, that pressure in your chest, that headache that follows, that's not loss of control. That's your nervous system resisting suppression. The prefrontal cortex can learn skills to regulate expression, choosing when and where to respond, but regulation is not the same as denial. Regulation says, I can feel this and stay present. Suppression says, I'm not allowed to feel this at all. Women who cry easily often struggle not because they feel too much, but because they live in environments that reward emotional performance over emotional honesty. And here's the quiet strength hidden in this trait. People who cannot fake emotions tend to be deeply trustworthy. They don't manipulate feelings. They don't perform vulnerability for effect. They don't use emotion strategically. They feel, and their bodies reflect that truth. In relationships, this creates safety. In conversations, it creates authenticity. In life, it creates alignment. The world often tells you this is a liability, but in reality, it's a rare form of integrity. For most women, the hardest part of crying isn't the tears. It's what comes after. The apology, the self-criticism, the feeling that you showed too much. Shame doesn't come from your biology. Shame is learned. At some point, your nervous system picked up a message. My emotions make people uncomfortable. My tears create tension. I need to manage myself so others don't feel awkward. So the body keeps doing what it needs to do, releasing pressure. But the mind turns against it. This is why many women feel embarrassed, even when crying alone. The emotion passes. The tears stop. But the judgment lingers. Let me ask you something gently. When you cry, do you immediately start analyzing how you looked, how you sounded, how you were perceived? Do you replay the moment, wishing you had handled it better. That inner voice isn't intuition. It's conditioning. This is where certain cognitive behavioral patterns take root. Emotion arises. The body responds. The mind criticizes. Shame adds another layer of tension. So instead of relief, you feel exposed. Instead of softness, you feel regret. But here's the truth most women were never told. There is nothing morally wrong with your nervous system responding honestly. Your tears aren't proof that you're unstable. They're proof that at some point, your body learned it wasn't safe to disconnect from feeling. And that matters, because many people survive by numbing, by detaching, by pushing emotion so far down they stop recognizing it. You didn't do that. And that doesn't mean you're fragile. It means your system stayed open. Long before we have language, our nervous system is already learning the rules of connection. As children, we don't analyze emotions. We experience what happens after we express them. When we're upset, are we met with comfort? Are we ignored? Are we told to calm down, stop crying, or handle it ourselves? Those early moments quietly shape how the body uses tears later in life. For some women, crying once brought closeness. It was the only moment care arrived. So the nervous system learned, this is how I'm seen. For others, emotion felt unsafe. Too much. Too inconvenient. So the system learned to hold everything in, until it couldn't anymore. Neither pattern is a flaw. They were adaptations. This is often explained through attachment patterns, not as labels, but as learned strategies. Some nervous systems learn to reach outward when emotion rises. Others learn to compress emotion inward until pressure builds behind an invisible wall. And then one day, something small cracks that wall. A missed call, a careless comment, a moment of feeling overlooked. And suddenly, the tears feel uncontrollable. Not because the present moment is overwhelming, but because past emotions never had space to resolve. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever cried and thought, I don't even know why this hurts so much? That confusion is often the body responding to more than one moment at once. Not just now, but then. This is why understanding your history matters. Not to blame your past, not to pathologize yourself, but to replace self-judgment with context. Because once you realize your tears were learned responses designed to protect connection or survival, they stop feeling like defects. They start feeling like information. We can't talk about crying without talking about biology. Hormones influence emotional sensitivity, stress thresholds, and how quickly the nervous system moves into release. Across the month, across life stages, and especially under chronic stress, the body's chemistry shifts. Changes in cortisol affect how much pressure your system is carrying. Fluctuations in serotonin can influence emotional stability and resilience. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, plays a role in emotional openness and connection. None of this means women are less rational. It means the body is responsive. But biology is only part of the story. Culture finishes the lesson. From an early age, many women receive mixed messages. Be warm. Be empathetic. Be understanding. Be emotionally available. But don't be emotional in a way that makes others uncomfortable. So you learn to care deeply, while also managing how visible that care is allowed to be. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been praised for being compassionate and criticized for showing the emotion that compassion creates? That's the double bind. You're encouraged to feel, but discouraged from expressing. Over time, this creates internal conflict. Your nervous system responds honestly. Your mind questions whether that honesty is acceptable. And this is where so much unnecessary self-blame begins. Because instead of asking whether the environment supports emotional health, you ask whether you are the problem. But here's the truth. Your tears didn't suddenly appear because you failed at being composed. They appear because your system is doing exactly what it was designed to do in a world that rarely slows down enough to accommodate emotional depth. Crying is often described as healing. And many times it is. After a good cry, your body may feel calmer. Your breathing slows. The emotional edge softens. That's your nervous system completing a stress cycle and beginning to return to balance. But here's something important that's rarely explained. Crying is not automatically helpful in every situation. There's a difference between regulation and overload. When crying is regulating, it's usually followed by some sense of relief, even if it's subtle. The emotion moves through. The pressure releases. You feel a little clearer, a little steadier. But when crying becomes frequent and relief never comes, it's often a signal that your system's capacity is being exceeded. Not because you're weak, because stress has become chronic instead of situational. When your body never fully leaves alert mode, when your nervous system stays braced day after day, tears don't resolve the tension. They reveal it. This is where many women misunderstand themselves. They assume the problem is that they cry too much, so they try to control it, suppress it, hide it. But suppression doesn't increase capacity. It only removes the warning light. Crying in these moments isn't something to fix. It's information. Your body is saying, something needs more support than I currently have. That support might be rest. It might be emotional boundaries. It might be slowing down or reducing stimulation. Or it might be acknowledging needs you've minimized for too long. And sometimes, it means reaching for help beyond what you can provide on your own. Listening to tears doesn't make them stronger. Ignoring them often does. What matters most isn't whether you cry. It's how you respond to yourself afterward. For many women, the tears pass, but the self-attack begins. You replay the moment. You judge yourself. You promise to do better next time. Not better in terms of honesty, better in terms of hiding. So here's a different approach. When tears come, pause and name what's happening. Not with criticism, with clarity. This is my nervous system releasing pressure. This is emotional information moving through me. That simple acknowledgement brings your prefrontal cortex back online. It interrupts the shame response. Next, try to name the emotion precisely. Not I'm upset, but disappointed, overwhelmed, grieving, lonely, relieved. This kind of emotional labeling increases regulation because the brain responds better to specificity than suppression. Then give yourself one clear boundary. I need a moment. I'm going to pause before continuing. I'll come back to this. Boundaries aren't dramatic. They're stabilizing. And finally, support your body. A slow breath, a glass of water, a hand on your chest, a few steps outside. These small actions signal safety to the nervous system and help rebalance neurochemistry. This isn't about stopping tears. It's about letting them pass without turning them into evidence against yourself. Because crying doesn't mean you're losing control. Often, it means your body is preventing you from losing it later. Let me ask you one last question. What would change in your life if you stopped treating sensitivity as a defect and started treating it as information? If you're someone who feels deeply, notices quickly, and responds honestly, you don't need to become less human to be respected. You need environments, relationships, and boundaries that honor how your system works. You are not weak. You are responsive. And in a world that rewards emotional numbness, that responsiveness is not a liability. It's a form of intelligence. If this video helped you see yourself more clearly, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Here, we talk about psychology in a way that helps you understand yourself, without judgment, without pressure, and without trying to turn you into someone else. And if you feel ready to go deeper, if you want practical tools to help regulate your emotions, build inner stability, and move out of survival mode at your own pace, I created a guide specifically for that process. It was designed to help you develop emotional regulation and grounded self-mastery, not by forcing change, but by working with your nervous system instead of against it. You'll find that guide in the first pinned comment below. Until next time, take care of your nervous system. It's been protecting you all along.